All right, we're live again for Dynasty Saturday Night 5. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you're listening to the Going for Two audio podcast feed. If you're watching us here on YouTube, whether it's now or later, please make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, maybe even throw us a comment or two. That'd be wonderful. Something fun to announce, logo design contest. In the spirit of it's a new season. Sure, why not? We'll just call it a new season now. In the spirit, because the NFL calendar year started, and in the spirit of Damian Pierce, who's on our logo, probably getting company in the draft, we're having a new logo design. So you can go to my Twitter at ffjunkie_ and DM me a 16 to 9 ratio. I guess I don't know. I'm not with the graphics. JPEG file, and the winner gets a free PLP from Going for Two. PLP is a personal league podcast. That's where we do a podcast about your Dynasty league. Tonight, as you can see, my regular co-host Josh is not here. I'm joined by Dan Toomey of Dynasty Nerds. Dan, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's a great time of year to be talking Dynasty. We got pro days happening this week. Draft is right around the corner. It's a great time to talk rookies.
Except we're going to take a break from rookies for once, right? Dan, you're with Dynasty Nerds. Please tell folks where they can find you and your work and what you do and Twitter and all that.
Yeah. So I've been with Dynasty Nerds for about 18 months now, approaching my 2-year anniversary. Senior writer and also on-site reporter and show host to do a bunch of stuff at Dynasty Nerds. Mm-hmm. You can find me on Twitter at DanT_NFL. That's the main hub for most of my content, whether it's, live streams like this, my articles, my thoughts, it's always on there. And then obviously dynastynerds.com is good for all of our content. I do like to tell everyone now is a good time to join our Nerd Herd membership. We have a ton of rookie film. I actually host live rookie mock drafts every Monday night on our members only Discord. So it's probably one of the best times a year to join over there. And if you'd like to give it a shot, you can use my promo code LUNA, LUNA, to get 15% off at checkout. So definitely worth a couple months worth of subscription just to get rookie tape alone.
Right on. Oh, for sure. You were talking before the show about Rashee Rice. I happen to be a Ricer myself, and I was watching some of him in the Nerd Herd film room. Yeah, so love it. All right, so just to remind folks who forgot, or if you're new to our show, Dynasty Saturday Night 5. Each of the co-hosts has a list of 5 about the topic that we're going to talk about this evening, just as a vehicle to chop it up about Dynasty. So this week we're talking sort of player movement, post free agent frenzy, if you will, but I guess trades count too. Before we get going with our lists and stuff, any general thoughts you have about what we've seen this week? We kind of had started slow, but then, by the end of the first, 3 days of the week, we kind of had a bit of a frenzy. Running back started going late. And then it's kind of been trickling since. Any general thoughts on what you've seen?
Yeah, it's very interesting how every year there's a different market that kind of pops off. And this year we're seeing the defensive tackles get paid. And it's funny because almost in response, you see a lot of guards getting big contracts. So the NFL is a very reactionary league. We see big spending along the interior of the defensive line, and other teams are matching that with big spending on the interior of the offensive line. I know, obviously, everything we do is fantasy centric. So moves like that, they kind of get brushed under the carpet as far as conversations and topics of discussion. But I think it's very important for people to pay attention to rosters as a whole, as far as how positional spending is going. We'll get into it later, but the running back market right now is bone dry. And I think Saquon is actually sitting at home very happy that he signed that franchise tag, because nobody's getting paid. I don't know if you saw the Rashad Penny contract, but man, I could go out and hit the lottery scratcher tomorrow and be taking home a lot more than Rashad Penny is looking at this upcoming year. But it's a copycat league, as they say. And I think everyone's picking up on the running back positional spending not being the way to go if you're trying to make a Super Bowl run. I mean, look at the Super Bowl champions. They had a 31-year-old running back on almost a veteran minimum, and they had a seventh round draft pick in Isaiah Pacheco. So I think those two running backs alone were a cap hit of less than $5 million last year. Whereas you got the Dallas Cowboys, who obviously didn't make it to the Super Bowl, had a $22 million cap hit in the running back room. So I think the league is finally, I mean, well, Jerry Jones always does his own thing, but I think the rest of the league is finally catching up. Like, hey, we need to be smart about where we're allocating our resources. So it's always interesting to see how the league is reacting to each other during the early free agency period.
Yeah, absolutely. I jokingly say like, oh, offensive linemen and defensive players don't exist, because but at the end of last week's episode, I told folks to pay attention to the offensive linemen in free agency, if for no other reason than they're the folks who are, protecting the quarterbacks and, which affects our passing game and, blocks for the running backs on our roster. But, you bring up an important point about looking at rosters as a whole and where the money's getting allocated. And also, knowing that a team has a good defense, has one impact on fantasy, where a team having a terrible one has quite another impact on fantasy. I don't know if the Lions are going to be as fun DFS as they were this past season, but yeah, you mentioned the running backs. I've been using this phrase, the 2023 running back wild ride, because between the deep free agent class and the deep rookie class, and as you said, the trends in usage, deployment, drafting, salary allocation, you're going to see guys at, in July, like, is Damian Harris going to be packing groceries? Like, or, it's an exaggeration, but,
Yeah,
I think, guys are going to be signing short, cheap deals, even more annoying committees than we've had in the past. And things are going to look rough for a few players. Like, nobody's safe,
One of the first reactions I had to Zeke being officially released by the Cowboys is I don't think he signs a contract till like July. I think he's not going to land on a team until training camp. I think he's going to be asking for a lot of money. I think teams are going to just go into the draft and see what happens and kind of like, try to wait it out until he will sign something for not as much as he's hoping for. So don't be surprised if a lot of these veteran running backs don't get signed until after the draft, or even, not even until training camp starts.
And running backs can be a big piece of what we talk about tonight. But first, we're going to pay some bills. Tonight's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. They are the industry leader with huge best ball leagues, huge best ball tournaments, private leagues, pick'ems. They're not just football. You can do it for every major sport. I know a lot of the D-Gens are already drafting like 19 best ball teams already by the time it's March. And so you can sign up with our promo code of GF2. Go to Underdog Fantasy and you put in the promo code GF2. You'll get a deposit match of up to $100. That's, of course, for new registrants, new accounts. It's that easy. So, sign up, use the promo code GF2, start playing, and maybe even start winning. Okay, time for our lists of 5, our post free agency, trading, etc. Lamar in a desert by himself takes. And Dan, why don't you kick us off and choose which one you want to talk about first?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to bring up is this is a player that I loved coming out of college. We're going to be talking about Miles Sanders here. He was stuck at Penn State behind Saquon Barkley, kind of played in the shadows, but did look very productive in his year without Saquon. He lands with the Philadelphia Eagles in the second round and kind of just dealt with a committee the entire time he was there in Philadelphia, and was honestly a disappointing asset to have in fantasy, especially when you think about where he went in his rookie draft that year, which was, first round pick in most formats and most leagues that I played in. Now he's off Philadelphia and he lands with the Carolina Panthers. Now, don't quote me on this, but I believe he was one of the first running backs to sign when free agency was open. And I remember because at first they announced it as a 4-year deal. And one thing I've learned working in this industry is you have to be very careful when deals are initially announced. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but like Geno Smith's deal initially got announced as a $120 million contract. But then if you go back and look at it, it's actually more like 75 million with another 45 million in incentives that aren't even realistic to hit. So I always like to hold my takes until I start seeing the numbers come in. And now that I've seen the numbers, it's a contract that is signaling for me to go out and buy Miles Sanders if I am thinking that I'm a contender this year. He's still got that ick, I'm guessing that the roster that he's on right now in your dynasty league, possibly the owner has had him since his rookie draft and has just been disappointed and just dying to get out from underneath this asset and sees this as the perfect time to sell. I think you need to take advantage and use that as a time to buy. So if we look at the contract, it is a 4-year, $25 million contract, average salary of about $6.5 million, guarantees $13 million in guarantees, which means Miles Sanders will be on the Carolina Panthers for the 23 and the 24 season. It won't be until 2025 that they can get out from under the contract with a minimal dead cap hit. So he's locked in there for 2 years. And for a second contract running back, 2 years is almost as good as it's going to get with the current landscape. Like we just talked about with the way the league is treating running backs, it's kind of draft them, burn them, and then let them go. It's very unfortunate. I saw something on Twitter last night. It was like, "Mama, don't let your boys grow up to be running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Be kickers instead and sign those Matt Gay contracts." But he's going to land with the Carolina Panthers. It's a ascending team playing in a terrible division. They just traded up for the number 1 overall pick, so they're going to have what seems like CJ Stroud currently. I'm still not convinced CJ Stroud. I think it's still a toss-up. I think they're still completing their evaluation process, and not till the Ohio State and Alabama pro days are over will we see a stronger signal on what quarterback they are going to go with. But they have the option of selecting either one. Now, this is a team that has a really good young ascending defense, and they also have some great pieces along the offensive line. I love the hiring of Frank Reich. I think they brought in all the right coaches around him, and I just love what they're doing. And the last thing I'll mention is David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers. He went to Scott Fitterer, his general manager, and he said, "Listen, go all in." He's like, "I want to win. Tom Brady's gone. Drew Brees is gone. This division is for the taking. I think they're going to do whatever it takes to win. And I think that's going to involve a lot of Miles Sanders action this season."
Yeah, and I think a couple of signs too that are good for him is one, Hubbard and Blackshear already there, still under contract, both. So with the addition of Sanders and, as you said, all the positive signs that you've been talking about, likely that not much capital is going to get spent at the running back position in their draft. The rookie quarterback not only elevates things because he's good, but also because he's a rookie, they might lean on Sanders a little bit, right? So it's a little bit of narrative, but
Yeah.
you could see it happening. As far as also not only reunited with Reich, I believe he's reunited with Deuce Staley as the running backs coach there.
Mm-hmm.
And find a gap, hit it. That's what he does, and that's Sanders. As far as a buy for a contending team, what are we talking about as far as a price that you're willing to pay?
So I'm glad you brought that up because I just brought up our Dynasty GM tool, which is part of that Nerd Herd subscription that I was mentioning before. And you could actually search for any player and see some recent trades that have gone down. So we have 2 trades since the Carolina Panthers signing. First one is there's a couple draft picks involved, and the GM unfortunately doesn't tell you where those draft picks exactly land. So it's a swap of Miles Sanders for Brandon Ayuk. And then it's also a swap of 2023 second round picks. So you can see maybe a team that has some really good wide receiver depth is moving off of Brandon Ayuk. Question marks in San Francisco surrounding what the quarterback situation is going to be like. God forbid it's Sam Darnold week 1. So, I think that is kind of fair market value, that type of wide receiver for that type of running back. Like I said, I haven't seen what second round picks are involved. And then the other trade that I see is somebody sold Josh Jacobs and a 24 first for the package of Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, and a 23 first. I got to say, if I'm the player getting that package, I love that deal. You're moving off of Jacobs, who obviously had a great year last year, but I mean, the Raiders, we'll talk about them a little later. There's a lot of questions in Las Vegas. You're accelerating a 24 first round pick to a first round pick this year. Like I said, I can't see exactly where that pick lands. And then on top of it, you get a flyer on J.K. Dobbins. So I think if you can, in your Superflex leagues, go out and spend a first round pick anywhere from 108 to 112, I think picking up Miles Sanders would be a great option for you, because I think this rookie draft class has a not a severe drop off in talent, but a pretty substantial drop off in talents once you get past like the 107 range in Superflex drafts. So yeah, if I could have, because let's be honest, not everyone sees those first round picks for where they are right now. A lot of people are still casual enough where they're saying like, oh, I'm getting a first round pick. They're not seeing I'm getting the 111, I'm getting the 110. That's going to be I'm trying to think off the top of my head. That's going to be a Quentin Johnston, or now maybe that will be a Quentin
Jalen Hyatt, Josh
Jalen
Downs.
Hyatt, Josh Downs, Zay Flowers. So I think if you can move a late first right now for Miles Sanders, that would be a move I would be doing. And let's be honest, if we're talking about teams that are contenders, you probably have a late first. From making the playoffs last year, and then maybe you didn't get over the hump. And this can be an asset that would give you a better chance of getting over that hump than maybe a rookie wide receiver that you're drafting in that spot that might take 2 years to break out.
I've been telling people like between like the 110 and like 203 ish. I'm not, based on the way mocks are going now. I'm not seeing a lot of value there. I'm trying to trade up or back from that range. So if I can turnkey that into, an asset that's going to help me as a contender, that's a little more of a known quantity, I can dig it. My first one is, we're going to stay with the running backs. My poor Swifter heart is breaking, but I see a possible buy opportunity. So just a little bit about Swift. I've been a Swifter since like day one. I've been slow to kind of realize and accept things with him, and was sort of saying, okay, well, they have to use him better. They have to see how talented he is, or maybe Jamal Williams will leave, and then they signed Monty. Now, I want to say clearly that I don't think Monty's effect on Swift is really all that much more than Jamal Williams' effect on Swift. It's just that I'm late to the party dropping Swift in the ranks now. It's like I loved him, and I couldn't quit him, and that sort of thing. He is what he is, right? Or at least for now, while he's still on the Lions for a year, right? He's going to get those 10 touches, and he's going to try to maximize them. He wasn't really making great decisions when running the football, so they relied on the smarter veteran Williams. And when they needed explosion, sure, they went with Swift, and he was dinged up, and that doesn't get you into a coach's good graces, et cetera, right? So he is what he is. We know what he is now. But I see a possible buy opportunity on Swift for folks, and that's kind of the take here is maybe go out and kick the tires on Swift. He only has the 1 year left with the Lions. Very doubtful that they re-sign him, just based on the way that they've used him and the fact that he'll be a second contract running back anyway. Likely, he pays off better somewhere else, maybe goes from 10, 12 touches a game to 15, 18 touches a game. Still not a lot between the tackles. You want him in space. You want him catching passes. But, maybe a team that uses him better and more suited to his skill set. But at the same time, he's going to be older and on a second contract. So sort of gauge that price of what you're willing to spend, knowing that information, that he took a ding now in perceived value because Monty signed, but also knowing that it's not going to get so much better at the next stop on his career. I've been trying with the equivalent ish of like 2 mid to late seconds and not getting many bites. But I think he's a buy relative to the way he's perceived now, because I think there's an overreaction to Monty. So what say you?
So let me ask you something. I just had an idea. Do you think, because I've been around Dynasty long enough to remember the 2020 rookie running back class, right? That was going to be the class that was going to reset the Dynasty landscape with Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers. Do you think a lot of those players still hold that value from that class? That
I think
people
there's
are,
residue, yeah.
that people are
And
hoping
I
that
think
the talent is going to eventually shine through for these players on perhaps their second contract, which we will be entering for. Honestly, is Jonathan Taylor the only one that gets re-signed?
well, I mean, you have to expect that CEH isn't getting the 5th year picked up in Kansas City.
I don't think
You
he's going to be on the
know?
Chiefs roster week 1, to be honest with you.
So, yeah, no, JT has a chance of being re-signed, but in today's NFL with the running backs, who knows? Yeah. So,
Yeah. So, I love the talent that Swift had. I agree that his value is not with the Lions. It's going to be with that next contract next year, and I don't know how to project that. We're a full year out from talking about where he will land the following year. But I'm glad that we both agree that the value you're buying on Swift is not with the Detroit Lions.
Mhm.
It's going to be on the next contract with the next team. And I'm going to tell you something. I think that we are not at the bottom of the value dip. I
Okay.
think it can go lower.
Sure.
Think about this. So I was looking at before the show, little like notes. So Brad Holmes, the new Lions general manager, he's been there 3 years, and I was looking at his positional spending and where it ranks amongst the other NFL GMs at the running back position. So in 2021, they spent the 21st most at running back. 2022, they brought on Jamal Williams. They spent the 9th most. And then 2023, this year so far, they spent the 15th most. I think the formula he is going for is to have a veteran running back in the room that they can lean on for leadership and reliability in close game situations, while also having an explosive, younger rookie type running back that perhaps can turn into something. And if not, we would just keep the cycle rotating over and over again. So I would not put it out of the question that the Lions don't draft a running back this year. I'm not saying day 2, or I know people are talking about Bijan up until the Montgomery signing, but what if they were to sign somebody like a Chase Brown? I mean, to draft somebody like a Chase Brown, say, I don't have the draft picks in front of it, say like late round 3, early round 4. Swift's value would definitely take a dip after that, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I think it's not time to call the bottom yet with DeAndre Swift. And I think you were saying you were trying to send a couple late seconds to get Swift, and you're not getting any traction on that. I would say give it a couple weeks to the NFL draft, and I think you will definitely be able to get DeAndre Swift for those late seconds. And the best part is he will still be a usable asset as a flex player in spot starts for this year. Because he's still got that receiving upside. It's going to be a great offense. And, he's got handcuff value, if anything happens to those other running backs. So I like Swift's talent, and I am willing to buy into that talent. But I don't think we've called the bottom yet on his value.
That's a good point. Yeah. Friend of the show, Facebook user. I don't know how that happens, but hello, user. Also breaking heart, has a broken heart here with Swift. He's right there with me. So Dan, what's your next take from this week's player movement?
All right. So listen, since we're talking about Lions and DeAndre Swift, why don't we talk about the recent ex-Lion, the Pokemon Master, if you will, That's Jamal Williams.
Wait, hold on a sec. What, a Pokemon monster? What?
Oh, you haven't seen?
No, I probably no.
So there
Oh.
was a post game interview where one of the reporters found out that he plays I don't know if it's Pokemon Go or like collects Pokemon cards, but the reporter called it
Oh.
Pokemon. And Jamal's like,
Oh.
whoa, whoa, don't respect my guys like that. It's Pokemon, not Pokemon.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, no, I never caught that. My bad.
Yeah, so pretty funny
Yeah.
soundbite
Yeah.
if you ever take a look at that one. But for those who don't know, Jamal Williams, he signed a contract with the New Orleans Saints. Give me a second, I'll pull up the details of the contract. But the important thing that I don't think is being talked about enough is what happens with Alvin Kamara and a possible suspension. Now, for those who don't know, if a player gets suspended, their guarantees in their contract that year are voided. And I know before free agency and the new league year started, one of the big talks was about how the Saints don't have any cap space, which, guys, it's been 4 or 5 years of this. Mickey Loomis, he's a credit card master and he knows how to roll over those payments to the next year.
I think I need to hire Mickey Loomis to clean up some of my stuff going on over here.
Yeah, whenever you think that the Saints are out of money, Mickey Loomis is like, hold my beer, I'll go find some for us. So Jamal Williams, he signed a 3-year, $12 million contract, which it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's actually one of the higher contracts that has been
Yeah.
offered at the running back position. It's got over $8 million guaranteed at signing, so he's going to be a Saint for the next 2 seasons. Now, let's go back to that Alvin Kamara contract we were talking about. They have a potential out in his contract next year. However, there is the issue of the dead cap this year. If he is released prior to June 1st, pre-June 1st designated release, he kills almost $17 million on their cap. Now, however, I believe if he is suspended, about half of that comes off because that guaranteed money is no longer guaranteed due to suspension. So if we see a world where Kamara is suspended for, let's say, a full season, because I don't know if you've seen the video, but
No, I didn't. I've just been hearing 6 games and just saying like, oh, okay, 6 games.
Yeah, it was he beat the hell out of this guy, basically. But either way, if it's 6 games, 8 games, or full year, that guaranteed money is going to start trickling off that contract, and a release becomes a little bit more likely. Now, do I think the Saints wind up releasing Kamara? No. I think they keep him on the roster. I think he's there until next year, and then we can have this whole conversation all over again. However, the suspension still helps Jamal Williams because if Kamara is not on the team for those 6 games, can you tell me who is behind Jamal Williams in that running back room?
Is the ghost of David Johnson still under contract? Or
no, he is not on the team. And
so then I know Mark Ingram's a free agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Abram Smith's in the XFL now. Or was
I'll give you a hint. He was a former Arizona Cardinal.
Oh, Eno. That's right.
Yes.
They picked up Eno.
Yes. So behind Jamal, you have Eno Benjamin, Derek Gore, and then Dwayne Washington. So I love Eno, but let's be honest, there's not a lot behind Jamal Williams. Yeah. So if Kamara is suspended, Jamal Williams is locked into that RB1 role on that roster. And then even if he is not suspended, I mean, what year was that? Was that 2018 when Kamara and Ingram were both running back ones on the Saints offense? Mm-hmm. Despite playing in the same backfield, they both finished the top 12 running backs. Now, that was a Drew Brees offense. Do I think this Derek Carr offense is going to ascend to those levels? No. Do I think Jamal Williams finishing in the RB 16 to 18 range is a worthwhile buy? Yes, I think it's worth going out there and making the move for Jamal Williams. Like we were saying, I'm not going to say it's a Miles Sanders level buy, but if you can send a mid-range second-round pick to grab Jamal Williams, that's a move I'm making as a contender for sure.
Mm. So, and also, as you mentioned, the fact that he could just have what's often called standalone value, right? Like, he's an underrated pass catcher. They didn't ask him to do it much on the Lions, but in Green Bay, it's not like he was foreign to catching passes,
Yeah, yeah,
especially when rotating in and Jones wasn't on the field. Like, he caught passes some. So, he's got upside, whether Kamara's suspended or not. Like, when he's on the field, he can catch a pass or two. So,
yeah. And then just like real fast, pulling up the trade browser, and I think these are from the 16th. So I'm not sure if these are pre or post him signing, but we've got Jamal Williams and a fourth for a third. Like, come on. We got Elijah Moore for Jamal Williams and a third. We got Elijah Mitchell and a fourth for Jamal Williams. It's a lot of low-level assets being moved to add to this piece to your roster. And if you're a contender that just needs a little bit more running back depth, I think it's a worthwhile move. Like, say you have a Jonathan Taylor, and then say you already have a Miles Sanders. So, like, all right, I got an upgrade with the free agency signing. I need like one more guy to have like a good core of running backs. Jamal Williams is the perfect buy.
Right on. So why don't we stay with running backs here? I'll knock out my running back, and then you'll knock out your running back, and I think the rest we have our non-running back takes. You want to do that?
We will eventually talk about non-running backs today.
All right, I'll do mine, and I think it really will flow nicely into yours. Adjust draft capital expectations for the rookie running backs, but not necessarily their value. So what do I mean by that? First off, before this whole wild ride even started, we knew that over the last few years, the NFL was, deploying and drafting running back differently. People were they're just looking at the position differently than they did. One might say that the zero RB truthers in fantasy were ahead of the NFL, right? Slightly, right? So we know that they're not putting as much draft capital into the position as possible. I mean, as they used to, right? And so what I had been sort of developing as a thesis, so to speak, with some folks and getting some mixed feedback on it, but not that I was, on a different planet, was that, a fourth round running back these days, and maybe even the right fifth one, isn't the dreaded day 3 running back, quote unquote, that it used to be, simply because we're shifting the expectations downward positionally. Just like we have a different positional threshold for draft capital with quarterbacks now, which is like, first rounder, the NFL doesn't like you. And whatever we want to see rounds 1 through 3 for wide receivers, we kind of maybe have to shift our expectations for running backs. So we knew that going in, right? Or at least that's where my mind was. Now enter this wild ride off season. You've now had the Panthers, Eagles, Bears with Foreman. You're going to talk about the Dolphins soon. It's like we've already had some prime running back spots. Maybe not scratch off a rookie coming in the draft, but certainly either much less likely to spend high capital, and or they're insured against, like, if they don't get their guy, well then then we can spend lower capital because we brought in XYZ running back. So I think what I'm doing is taking the running back class 2023 and even just going just a little bit downward in my expectation. Like, the whole class just kind of shifts downward a little bit for the most part. Maybe after the first 3 or 4 guys, though, in draft capital expectation, but not necessarily fantasy value. Yes, it's still a 5th round pick. And yes, the NFL still thinks of a 5th round pick the way it thinks of a 5th round pick, right? But, a 5th round pick running back means X in fantasy. Like, that's what it means, right? Like, this guy is the, RB2 in a committee. This guy is the 3rd down back in a committee. We can expect X points per game in PPR from this guy. It means pretty much the same thing. Maybe the value is a little different in what you're willing to give up because the insulation isn't there with the lower capital, but not much. So I guess my advice would be, don't overreact too much if your late 3rd round darling running back ends up late 4th. It's not a huge difference in my opinion. I've had some mixed reactions to that. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. One thing I like to bring up is we were talking before the show that I do a lot of draft content in Dynasty Nerds. So I don't claim to be a draft expert. A lot of my draft takes, as far as I'm sorry, NFL draft, just to clarify, I'm talking about like best ball or any rookie drafts, actual NFL draft content. But a lot of my takes, I consume content instead of produce it, because I don't have enough time in the day to be scouting, offensive guards out of North Dakota State. Shout out Cody Moss.
Oh, then what the hell am I having you on the show for? Like what? Come on.
But it's funny because there's two things that everyone agrees on. One, if you take positional value out of it, Bijan Robinson is a top 5 player in this draft class. Truly a generational talent, probably the best we've seen since LaDainian Tomlinson coming out of school. Better than Saquon, better than Jonathan Taylor, better than Zeke. The second thing that everyone seems to agree on is they don't know how to fit him into the first round. Every time I listen to these draft experts doing any sort of like live mock draft or just going through their mock draft, they will just go team after team after team, and they'll get to like 27, like, oh, wait, Bijan Robinson we didn't pick yet, but he definitely should be gone by this point. So I think it's just, like we would talk about this whole time, the NFL is devaluing the running back position because it's like, have you seen the Moneyball?
No.
Okay, so that's kind of where this whole like analytics movement has come in sports, or at least that was a big Hollywood version of that. Basically, it's following the Athletics, and they're trying to replace their big name players with cheaper players that can produce the same. And one of the taglines is, "We will replace his production in the aggregate," which means we will compile 3 players for a lot cheaper, and the aggregate of those 3 players will be the production we were getting for that one high paid player. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of running back rooms doing around the NFL right now. They have, like we were talking about, look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They had Jerick McKinnon. I don't have his contract in front of me, but it wasn't a lot of money. They had Isaiah Pacheco, a super, super cheap rookie. And they really didn't need much more. They had very little invested in that position, and they won a Super Bowl. So I think a lot of owners and general managers are realizing that they can get the production out of the running back position that they need by spending money, for example, on offensive guards, by spending money, for example, on run blocking tight ends. They can get that production in the aggregate by spending money in positions that aren't so churn them and burn them. And we're seeing that in the NFL draft where, we had less and less running backs selected in the first round of the NFL draft. Saquon Barkley might be the last top 5 running back to go in the NFL draft. And if Bijan Robinson doesn't go top 10, we may not see another top 10 running back in the NFL draft ever again because he's that good. And so your point rings true that we have to take all of our draft capital assumptions and just slide them back a little bit. Jonathan Taylor was a 2nd rounder. Let's not forget about that. He's one of the better prospects to come out the last 5 years. So,
and especially sliding it back, as I said, because some of our dream spots, so to speak, our landing spots, they're a little more complicated and crowded now.
Yes, yes, and they will be for from now and almost forever going forward. And that's why I'm making a big push in my personal teams, and then also telling our members that we've always said, build your dynasty teams through the wide receiver, top it off with running backs to finish your title runs. And that has never been more true than it is nowadays. You need to get a solid wide receiver and quarterback core. And then once you're ready to go get that chip, the last piece you should put on is a running back. You know? And that's a conversation we could spend 5 hours talking about. But I think that mantra is being reflected in the way NFL draft capital is being deployed this year.
Absolutely. And speaking of one of our dream landing spots for running backs, what's your remaining running back take?
All right, so I know I saw you had a tweet out there about how we've always wanted Miami Dolphins running back, a rookie running back to land with the Miami Dolphins, and they never do it. And I think we're going to see a repeat this year because the Miami Dolphins moved their 3rd round pick for Jalen Ramsey this early this week, which I think is an amazing move. That gives them one of the best cornerback duos in the league. And their current draft capital is pick 51, pick 84, pick 178, and pick 238.
Mm-hmm.
That is 4 picks. The Miami Dolphins have 4 picks in this year's draft. And obviously they lost their first round pick due to tampering. And I don't think they're going to pick 4 times. I think they're going to trade back and wind up with closer to 6 picks. But that's just going to mean that the picks are winding up even later and even later. Yeah, like before the trade, I was like, man, if like Devon Achane lands in Miami, like that'd be such a great landing spot. But they went into free agency and they just re-signed their entire running back room. They brought back Myles Gaskin, they brought back Jeff Wilson, and they brought back Raheem Mostert, who are, I mean, they're all the coach's boys. You know, he had them all in San Francisco. He's bringing them back to Miami, re-signing them in Miami. So I don't see a world where Miami spends any worthwhile draft capital bringing in a running back.
For sure, yeah, and for those of you who are wondering, and really nobody is, but I'll say it anyway. I was responding to a conversation that I was having with somebody, and who said like, yeah, we always want Miami to draft running backs, and they never do. So I was like, you know what? Let me do some research. So they traded Jay Ajayi in 2018, and since then they have drafted under. It's not the same GM. Has it been since 2018? I don't think so.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, but anyway, Kalen Ballage, round 4, Chandler Cox and Myles Gaskin, round 7, Malcolm Perry, round 7, Jared Dokes, round 7. Those have been your Miami Dolphins running back draft picks since 2018. The other running backs they've rostered in that time, because if they're not drafting them, then they might as well be filling them in with Pro Bowlers that they've signed elsewhere, right? Well, those would be Patrick Laird, Zach Zenner, Matt Walton, Salvin Ahmed, Matt Breida, Jordan Howard, Dwayne Washington, Malcolm Brown, Duke Johnson, I think Joshua or Justin Scarlett, Chase Edmonds experiment, and then, of course, now Wilson and Mostert. They're just not putting running backs that we love on the roster, but it works.
I just checked for you, and Chris Greer has been the GM since 2016.
Okay, so there you go. Like this guy don't like running backs. This guy invented zero RB,
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I wouldn't expect I wouldn't expect a running back to go there, especially at 51 or 84. I don't think you're gonna.
And I mean, also, if you look at the team, like they could still use more offensive linemen. They could use a tight end because Gesicki's gone. I mean, there's other more pressing issues, and that's why I think they were so quick to re-sign Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Is Greer looked at the draft capital he has and said, "Well, I need a guard, I need a tackle. I need a guard, I need a tight end, I need some linebackers, and look at that, 4 picks already spent. I better go re-sign these guys." And because they went back to Miami for not like buco bucks.
No, not at all. Yeah,
I have it right up here in front of me. Jeff Wilson is set to make $1 million this year. Raheem Mostert is set to make $1.1 million. Yeah. Salvin Ahmed, $1 million. Myles Gaskin, $1 million. Yeah, they're just like, let's grab 5 running backs for $1 million each, and that's just the way we're gonna go. And we've seen with the run scheme down there that it's kind of plug and play. If you are a running back that's fast enough to hit the edge or to hit the gap in that wide zone run scheme, then you are good enough to produce. And they spent so much money in Tyreek Hill with Jalen Waddle. Like they want to push the ball down the field. And when they get the opportunity, they're going to hit the holes in the wide zone. And they don't need a very high draft capital or expensive running back to do that.
Yeah, I think the combined, I know AAV isn't a measure of guaranteed money and stuff like that, but the combined AAV for Wilson and Mostert is below $6 million. Right. So that's kind of like the definition of aggregate, right?
Yes, exactly. He's literally building it in the aggregate.
All right. So I'll stay with the Dolphins then. And my take is the era of cheap Tua is coming to an end. So between the fact that he's always kind of had way too much hate, in my opinion, and then the concussions and not being on the field much and worrying about his career and taking so long to clear from the concussions, et cetera, he was sliding. His value was dipping. He was slipped to like a mid third round in a super flex startup, right? And that's not happening anymore, in my opinion, right? They picked up his fifth. They're saying we have faith enough in him to pick up that fifth. He's going to be the quarterback for a couple more years there. He's got the weapons around him that are built for his game, like getting the ball out quick to those guys, and has a solid running game now, or continues to have the solid running game. Those question marks are over about the backfield, and listen, is there always the chance that like X, Y, and Z with concussion? Sure. Will he recover completely all his value, or will he sometimes still carry the concussion scarlet letter for some people? Yeah, sure. But I don't think the era of getting him at the 307 and the 309 in a superflex startup, at least the way the superflex startups that I'm in that have like 9 quarterbacks in the first round, like that's just not happening anymore. So if you're gonna maybe kick the tires on Tua now, it might be the time to do it before people start getting hip to like his value starting to go up. Am I way off there?
So I'll be real honest. When I saw the show sheet said the cheap Tua is coming to an end, I thought you were talking about his salary cap hit on the Dolphins. I'm like, yeah, he's about to be a really expensive quarterback next year.
Okay, all right.
Both are true. Both are
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
I do agree. I think Tua is a good value right now. I think anybody who has Tua on their roster is probably frustrated from the last season when he missed so much time. I don't think injuries are a sticky stat. I think that I know people are like, yes, once you have a concussion, the chances of repeating a concussion are higher, but I don't think he is concussion prone like a lot of people like to say. I don't think injuries are a sticky stat. I think it's a lot like touchdown variance. He hit the bad side of variance last year with his injuries, and we've seen that happen to players in the past. I mean, Keenan Allen, when he was younger, was labeled as the injury riddled wide receiver. And then he went off for like 7 straight years where he didn't really miss any games, but he still held that moniker until last season he missed a lot of time, obviously, but that 7-year gap in between, he was healthy that entire time. And I just think that injuries are a lot of variance, and just like we see with touchdowns, like Robert Tonyan, he had high touchdown variance that one year and finished as a top 4 tight end, and now without those touchdowns, he's not really producing as much. And I think injuries.
Yeah, Rodgers isn't holding a gun to the Jets' head to bring in Tunyon, and he's not on the wish list. So
Exactly,
yeah.
he's not in high demand. So I think he hit the high variance side of injuries last year, and I think we're going to see a full season out of Tua this year. And I think a full season with Tua is a top 7 quarterback season for fantasy football. And like you said, the time to buy is now, maybe the next 2 to 3 months, because like we just said, they don't have a lot of draft picks, so they're not adding like JSN to the offense or something where everybody's be like, oh my god, we got to get Tua. So yeah, you're lucky enough where you have maybe 2 more months to buy him, but I think he's in for a big year this year. Now, do I think the Dolphins re-sign him? I think that is still up in the air. I think his performance this year has a lot to say about that. But I mean, definitely if I'm a team that's going to be pushing for a championship this year, if I could grab Tua as my quarterback 2, quarterback 3, that's something I would feel very, very good about.
So let me ask you this. In a vacuum, Tua or the 104?
I'd probably take the 104, to be honest with you. I think, yeah, I think I would take a re-roll at quarterback. I mean, if I had the 104 because I traded into it, I would use that I would flip the 104 for Tua. And honestly, I think you could get more on top of that. I think you could get, Tua and maybe a third or a fourth coming back your way. And I like this year's third round and fourth round picks in Superflex leagues. If 104 was a pick that I'm making because my team was landing there, I think I would take the reroll at quarterback and just, grab 4 more years of a rookie instead of dealing with the Tua contract talks next offseason. Which
I purposely chose 104
Yeah.
as sort of the last among what we think is going to be 3 quarterbacks in a row, at least for now. Yeah, but if that changed to say the 106, does your thinking start to change?
Yeah, then I'll go Tua there. So I guess that's exactly where my Tua value falls right now, is like 105, 106, that type of area.
All right, what is your next take from this week's player movement?
All right, so we might as well stay in the AFC East. I know you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Let's talk about one of his new weapons. I think we need to just get ahead of the curve here and declare that Garrett Wilson is a top 3 dynasty wide receiver. I think the faster you come to that realization and you value that into your trades, I think you will finish ahead of your league mates. Justin Jefferson had a great rookie year, and everyone in Dynasty was pushing him up right away. Jamar Chase had a great rookie year. Everyone in Dynasty is pushing him up right away. A lot of ranking sets I see have Garrett Wilson in the 7 to 12 range for wide receivers. And I think at this point next year, Garrett Wilson will be locked in as a top 3 wide receiver, because we've seen that when Rodgers finds a talented young receiver, he has no issue locking on to that receiver. We've seen it with Devontae Adams. Not saying that Garrett Wilson is as talented as Devontae Adams, but he's pretty damn close.
Yeah, when I saw this, I was like, I could see it, right? So, but and I was just talking the other night on my other show, Dynasty Fever, how listen, I already got Wilson at 7. Like, how much am I going to bump him? With Rodgers there, is Rodgers all that much better than is 39-year-old Rodgers, in 2023, 2024, all that much better than the Mike White, right? Yeah, I don't know, and also, the fact that he's bringing in his shopping list of guys, I kind of worry, as much as he gets locked on talented guys, he also, has his my guys like a Lazard or a Cobb, and doesn't cut a lot of slack to young guys who mess up. So I don't know. I was kind of like, can he really go up any further in my eyes? I already have him above consensus at 7, but if you're saying that you're like, and I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, Wilson's clearly a dynasty sell now, right? Like, he's getting this bump with Rodgers. Like, so if you're looking at this and saying, okay, he's going to be a locked in dynasty wide receiver 3 years from now, do you mean like buy now because that value is going to shoot up? Is that what you're?
Yes. Okay. If I said to you that you could get Justin Jefferson when he was younger, because Justin Jefferson was 2020 draft class, and he went
like the late first in rookie drafts,
late
right?
first in his draft class. So let's say we jump forward to 2021, and I could say, hey, if you send the 104 right now in Superflex, you could have Justin Jefferson. Now, back then, you're like, oh, listen, he had a good rookie year. I don't know about that. If you look at that now, you're like, wow, I got Justin Jefferson for a single first. Jamar Chase had a bunch more hype coming into, I feel like, his rookie year, and he was going it's probably like top 5 in Superflex that season. So a little bit less of an extreme of an example. But Garrett Wilson, Garrett Wilson, sorry. Think about my I think if this is a type of player that if I can go out and get him for a first and like a second, maybe anything less than 2 firsts, I think you should do it now, because that price next year is going to be 2 firsts or possibly even more. I know we got Alan Lazard coming over to the Jets, and everyone's like, okay, well, Aaron Rodgers, he's going to lock on Alan Lazard. He's his guy, yada, yada, yada. We have to remember, Wilson's better than Lazard. Lazard was Aaron Rodgers' guy because he didn't have a lot at the time, And also Lazard is a great blocker. People have to remember
Yeah,
that. Like
yeah.
he's going to be asked to block in this offense a lot, which is something Wilson's not going to be asked to do a whole
Mhm.
bunch. So
And when Lazard and Devontae Adams were on the field at the same time, he threw more to Devontae Adams than he did Alan Lazard.
yes,
Um,
yes.
let's complicate this just a little bit more. What if I told you wait a couple weeks into the season when he's throwing to Lazard more as he's getting used to Garrett Wilson and people are disappointed in Garrett Wilson, the price will be even lower. Too risky, or am I overthinking it? Or
I think it's too risky.
yeah,
Because I was having a conversation with a coworker actually, because he plays a lot of fantasy football, and I was talking about I kind of talk about redraft all the time because I just love redraft because it feels like refreshing. I have a new team. I drafted a fresh team. I don't have to stare at this terrible dynasty squad I've had for 4 years.
Hmm.
And I already told them, I'm like, because we play in a work league together. I'm like, listen, I'll be honest with you. If I don't get Garrett Wilson like in the second round, he's my week one buy high, no matter what.
Hmm.
Like, I can totally see a world where he goes out there, has 9 targets, 7 catches for, let's say, 75 yards. That's my signal. Those 9 targets, that's the signal. He's going to be the guy, and I have to buy him.
Yeah.
So yes, that's always a risk you run. We don't know how training camp's going to go. I don't know, is Rodgers going to be at training camp, or is he going to be doing ayahuasca on the Jersey Turnpike? Like I just can't predict these things with this guy. But knowing you like that, right?
I just had the visual of him like on the turnpike.
The Vince Lombardi service area. Wilson is a talented enough player that I think he's going to command targets from Rodgers when Rodgers realizes the type of weapon he has. And yes, there is a scenario where he becomes a buy low the first couple of weeks because Lazard's see more targets, but I mean, I'll buy more. I'll just keep buying.
Yeah. So I'm seeing his ADP is roughly the late second between in Superflex for startups. Between when the 102 is getting picked with a kicker placeholder and when the 103 is getting picked with a kicker placeholder. I mean, if you're saying he's going to be a top 3 dynasty wide receiver next year, that's a good price. I
It
mean,
is.
as much as I am, we all preach, quarterbacks in Superflex, and they're never cheaper than they are in startups and rookie drafts. And 102, 103, you could get, Richardson, Stroud, like, yeah, I could see it.
Because think about like I said, think about Jefferson. What's his price right now? Unobtainable.
Yeah. What is that Futurama unobtainium? There's like an element that's called unobtainium because
it's from a movie.
God.
I just saw a clip from it the other week. I forget what movie, but no, you're right. It's definitely a fictional material in something.
Well, a very non-fictional friend of the show and fellow Going for Two podcast host, Kyle Senra, checking in saying, hi, guys. And he was also thinking about unobtainium. All right, Kyle, your job is, while we're doing the show, you go Google unobtainium and you tell us what pop culture thing we are referencing, right? So sometimes when I'm looking at these trade finders, it's hard to isolate the player's value because they're in a trade with like 90 other players,
Yeah.
But this week on March 15th, Garrett Wilson straight up for a 23 first that we don't know where it is. Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra for Lamar Jackson and Mike Williams. That's an interesting one. Yeah, especially with the mystery surrounding Mike Williams. Yeah. Garrett Wilson straight up for McCaffrey.
Steal.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Garrett Wilson for Jimmy G and Devonta Smith. You laugh. I mean, as much as I love Devonta Smith, and Jimmy G's a quarterback in the Superflex, I'm taking Garrett Wilson, I think, on that one.
Yeah.
All right,
Avatar. Yes, Avatar. That's what I was thinking of.
No, it's really from Avatar. But I've never
Yes,
watched Avatar. How do I know that?
because it's from Futurama, also probably.
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe. Oh, huh.
interesting.
Yeah, I've never seen any of the Avatar movies. All right. Let's see. We were just talking about Garrett Wilson and the man I love to hate, Aaron Rodgers. See, the thing is, like, I hate him so much for so many reasons. And now I hate him more because he takes psychedelics, which makes me want to hate him less. So I hate him more for making me want to hate him less because I hate him. All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, this one I think I might be wrong on. It's probably my weakest one. I don't think the Raiders are out on a rookie quarterback. Now, I don't think it's going to be at 7. I think rumor is they failed to trade up, and I think the only one that's going to be left there is Levis. I kind of like Hendon Hooker at pick 39 for the Raiders. I think there's an out in Jimmy G's contract after this year. I mean, there's some guaranteed money and all that, but I'm pretty sure there's an out. And and even if they let him run 2 years in the contract and slowly bring Hendon Hooker in a little bit more in 2024, I think Hendon Hooker is, without the age and ACL, might be QB3 in this class, and the combination thereof of the age and ACL. But ACLs aren't what they used to be. Age doesn't matter as much for quarterbacks. ACL doesn't matter as much for quarterbacks. It's not like he was only making his bacon with his legs, like, where that's essentially what we think of Richardson as now, although I happen to be a little higher on Richardson than most people. So I am crystal balling that the Raiders are not out on Hendon Hooker at pick 39. It's a very specific take. It's a specific player and a specific draft pick. Do you think I'm nuts?
Um, I think age is more important than you're leading on. We didn't see Hooker really have a breakout year until this year, when he was playing at 25 years old, playing against 18-year-old freshmen. Now, listen,
Fair point.
it is the SEC, so these freshmen are all very talented players. Just the late breakout age is concerning. And the other thing is, whatever team drafts him, he'll be 29 at the time that his rookie contract is up. So I think if you take away the ACL injury, I think Hooker is still quarterback 5 in this draft class. Just his draft capital is a lot higher. I think it still goes in some order: Stroud, Young, Richardson, and Levis, regardless of Hooker being injured. I just think if Hooker never received that injury, we see him go in the late first, as opposed to, I mean, I think he'll go mid second. I'm not sure if he'll go early second.
Okay.
That being said, I don't know what the Las Vegas Raiders are doing. They are all over the place.
It's Patriots West. Come on.
So they trade Darren Waller for a third. They're like, okay, so, they accepted. They can't compete in the AFC West, and they got to rebuild this thing, yada, yada, yada. They're signing Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay, so maybe he's, a bridge-type quarterback, and then he can develop a rookie behind them. They franchise tag Josh Jacobs. It's a lot of mixed signaling. And then last year, they went out, they got Devontae Adams. They signed... they overpaid for Chandler Jones. They paid him for sacks that, sacks aren't a sticky stat. I can get into defensive pressure rate and all that and talk about that for a while too, but sacks aren't sticky, and players should not be receiving big contracts based off of sacks.
And I could talk about paying for sex for a while too. So, I mean, we could get into that if you want.
So it's just a very confused franchise that doesn't know what direction they're going in. And it just, I don't know, it just scares me, the direction the Raiders are taking. And I feel like it's going to be the Will Levis landing spot at
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what's going to wind up happening. The only wild card in this is if the Colts love Levis. I think if the Colts love Levis and take him at 4, I can see a world where the Lions take Anthony Richardson at 6
We
because
were we were talking about that. I forget what podcast I was on, but I was talking with like the Lions being sort of an underrated ish spot for Richardson because he can sit behind Goff, and you know, and they have like a year to design an offense to his skills and that sort of thing. So that is an
I
interesting.
don't I don't think I don't think the Seahawks or the Lions are out on quarterback in this draft class.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Richardson is the type of prospect that holds enough upside that a team with a quarterback on the roster currently would take him. And also, the other thing you got to remember for the Seahawks and the Lions, they're playing with house money. They didn't play their way into these picks 5 and 6.
True.
These are from the Broncos and from the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just found gold for these general
Mm-hmm.
managers. Not to sidebar, but so back to the Raiders. Just the whole team kind of scares me because I see a lack of direction coming from everywhere in this franchise, from ownership who doesn't have the cash to put into escrow to give out guarantees, to the head coach who's failed multiple times before this, to the general manager and the roster construction that is still searching for an identity. And it's just going to be very hard for me to buy into Raiders players this year, regardless of what direction they go in the draft.
A lot of Raiders players didn't seem happy last year. I mean, that's all narrative, but I mean, when your team's a mess, it sometimes it shows up on the field. Jimmy G though is someone whose value has remained, roughly the same for a while. I don't think it gets too much of a bump with the Raiders, but you have a take here that I was intrigued by because it was general and I want to hear the details. So what's your last take for this week?
So I think what we're seeing now, and this is a take that also stems from actual NFL roster construction and salary cap management, is we are seeing a nice middle tier of quarterback forming. And when I say that, I mean it mostly from NFL salary cap implications. But for Superflex League, I think we're seeing a great market for cheaper quarterback 3 options emerging that contenders should be taking advantage and purchasing and buying right now. Some examples of this would be Baker Mayfield landing in Tampa Bay. If I can have a Baker Mayfield as my quarterback 3, I think that's a great option. The price you have to pay for Baker Mayfield right now can't be much more than a late second. If you look at Washington, the Commanders, they are not in position to draft a rookie quarterback. So they're going to have some combination of Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett starting. Both of those players can be had for what I can imagine be late seconds, or even Jacoby's case, a third, depending on how the manager feels about him starting or not. I think that Geno Smith and Jared Goff are 2 players that the conversation we just had about the Lions and the Seahawks drafting a quarterback, I think there may be dynasty managers in your leagues having that conversation with themselves and possibly be looking to sell Geno and Jared Goff. Were 2, like, out of all the names I mentioned, those are the best quarterback 3 options for a super flex roster right now.
For sure, yeah.
That you can get for second round picks. We talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, what's Jimmy Garoppolo going for? Second round pick. Now, this is all for contenders, obviously. If you're rebuilding, you have no interest in any of those quarterbacks, and I'd rather take the running backs in the second round, because the running backs in the second round right now are amazing if you look at what rookies might land there. But for contending teams, those running backs are not going to make a big difference to your roster. But those quarterback 3s to fill in during bye weeks or, God forbid, injury are going to make a huge difference. And there's a large emerging number of them out there. Everyone likes to talk about the Josh Allens and the Tuas and the Patrick Mahomes and all that stuff. But I think the bread and butter that is going to help you make the playoffs and win titles is going to be your quarterback 2/quarterback 3 position. And it's a great time to get these guys at what I think is going to be a cheaper price. And I think the price is going to get cheaper. When you get into your rookie drafts, rookie hype is off the chains. Everyone says oh, I don't want a late first. And then they see who gets drafted to what team. The highlight packages come out. All of a sudden, those late firsts are, it's FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, I don't want to miss out on Jalen Hyatt. He's so fast. He's so electric, and he landed with Patrick Mahomes. Think what he could be. He could be Marquez Valdez-Scantling. People don't think like that, but it's like that old Family Guy meme. It's like, oh, like what's in you could have the box or a boat.
Mystery box of the boat. Yeah.
It's like you could have Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Jalen Hyatt. Like, guess what? They're the same thing.
I'm glad I'm here for Hyatt hate. This is a safe space to hate on Jalen Hyatt, by the way, just so you know.
Well, I hate to say it, but the Hyatt hate, you got to tie in a little bit of the Hooker fade.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a boxing combo. It's the Highland hate and then the Hooker fade.
There you go. Yeah. But as long as we're going down a rabbit hole here with rookies, just to counterpoint your counterpoint on my Hendon Hooker, I know the late breakout, but what I've been telling folks with things is not only like every prospect was affected, at least for a couple of years before we get like the class of whatever, everybody was affected by the COVID season, and it was a weird season. And we don't know how people adjusted to that. But also, you give him Josh Heupel, a coach that knows what he's doing with an offense, and he thrived. Like how much of his early not breaking out is based in other factors other than him not being good. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it's a good point you brought up, because I was down at the Senior Bowl this year and I talked to a bunch of the quarterbacks, and we had some of the quarterbacks were 21-year-old seniors, and then like Hooker was a 25-year-old senior.
It's all over the place.
And it's like because you could you have your 4 years of eligibility, you could redshirt for a 5th year, and then I think they gave them 2 extra years possibly with COVID, depending on what their conference actually did in 2020.
Yeah.
So you have some kids that could be playing for 6, even 7 years, being like 26-year-old seniors. So
yeah, Mo Ibrahim is 49. Actually, people don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree that it's a very interesting time right now for ages for seniors. I'm not saying like I'm off of Hooker.
Yeah.
I think that if he lands in the right spot, he can definitely earn a starting job one day. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how the NFL views him. From everything I've heard, he interviews great. And we haven't seen any testing because he's still recovering from the injury.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just don't know how far interviewing gets you, but I could see a team like I said, the Raiders are a mess right now. I don't even know if they would think to do that. But
what about the Rams at 36?
I was going to say the Vikings
behind Stafford. Vikings.
I was going to say the Vikings are a team that I could see drafting a Hendon Hooker.
Yeah. I can see that.
Because you think about it, they got the Justin Jefferson contract coming up, what's that going to be? $30 million a year for a wide receiver.
Oh, yeah.
The Cousins money is done either at the end of this year or next year. And I think that's a roster that would want to have a experienced quarterback stepping in and providing cheap production. So I think that's a good way to go. The Rams, I think the Rams are hitting the reset button. I think they said we had our FM pick strategy and it paid off because we won a Super Bowl. And from 2017 to 2021, we had the best record in the league. So I think their run was successful. And I think now they're like, okay, we've been done blowing it up. Let's reset everything. Tear it down to the studs. Get rid of all our high-priced contracts. San Francisco's built to be a powerhouse in our division for a long number of years. Let us start our reset now. And I think they're going to be a team that's in on like the Caleb Williams and Drake May.
Right. Okay. I see. Yeah.
Auction next year. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think they are playing ahead of time on that one.
For what it's worth, the Vikings don't have a second. So they either have to trade back from 23 or up from 87, I think, at the moment. So, yeah. Just for those keeping track at home. Stetson is like 50. Kyle Keach says. I believe. I believe he's 50 on draft day, but he'll be 51 in June. I think his AARP came the same time his college degree did. But no, for real, like Will Levis is like 3 months older than Trevor Lawrence, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
and the tight end class, if you look at them, they're all older. I shouldn't say all, but in general, they're older prospects. Which, you know what? Before I do my final tight end take, I just want to devil's advocate for just on something real minor. You were saying like with your mid second, if you're a rebuilder, take one of these good running backs instead of because you'd have no interest in trading for a Baker or anything like that. Would you want to flip that second? Because why do you need Tyjae Spears scoring points on your roster for a couple of years? And
Because
maybe
Tajay is so good. Don't talk.
oh,
Don't
I
talk,
love Spears. No, I
don't
just
talk
no
Tajay like that.
this is a safe space for loving Tyjae Spears. By the way,
I say, by the way, he's not going in the second round in any of my leagues.
Oh, okay. Well, he's still floating around the mid second in most of the mocks that I'm in.
Yeah.
So or whoever Tank or Izzy Abanikanda, Kendra Miller. Like, do you really need them scoring points for 2 years on your roster with that 204? Like, maybe flip it, maybe trade up, trade back, maybe take a wide receiver instead. Or not that they're great wide receivers in that range right now, but what are your thoughts on that?
So I don't know if it's a hot take. My maybe hot take, maybe not so hot take is the 2023 running back class is going to be everything we were promised the 2020 running back class was.
All right. Let me see here. We're about an hour 15 in. I'm going to mark it so I can pull that clip for the hot take short on YouTube. All right. Go ahead.
I think that there is an immense amount of talent in this running back class, and I think you're going to want as many of them as possible. First round, second round. Like I said, I'm buying third and fourth rounders right now because I've been doing mock drafts and there's just so many people that I want pieces of. And I like drafting running backs on a rebuilder this year specifically because I don't have a lot of faith in the wide receiver class to offer us long-term production.
It's a good point.
People can come out and like surprise me, obviously. When I am drafting for a rebuilder, I am not necessarily drafting players to improve my team. I like to play my team like a stock market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some of these running backs in the second round are going to wind up in a situation in the fall where
you flip them.
Yeah, you flip them for a first.
Mm-hmm.
In season, like that happens so many times in season, especially because I know a lot of us that play Dynasty also play redraft, and we consume a lot of redraft content during the year. Whether it's the fantasy footballers or some of those bigger name podcasts that are mostly redraft focused, and you play a lot of redraft leagues with your work buddies or your families or your friends. And the articles that come out during redraft, talked about it during the pre-show. It's instant reactions from Sunday. It's who are the hot waiver pickups. Everyone's checking their waiver wires at 4 a.m. on a Wednesday. It's the culture the fantasy football industry is in. And, you draft, say you draft an Eric Gray at the end of the second. Okay, let's do a specific example right here. You draft Eric Gray at the 210 in your super flex league because he landed on the Seattle Seahawks. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, let's say that, all the reports in training camp are that Eric Gray's looking electric. He's beating out DJ Dallas. He's beating out, I don't really know any other running backs on the Seattle roster right now.
Tony Jones. Oh no, what's his face? Godwin I hate not being able to pronounce names. Ingwabuke or something like that. I think he's still technically under the guy who used to be on the Lions.
It's gonna bother me. Let me just pull it up real fast. I got rosters in front of me anyway. Yeah. Oh wow, no, this is ugly. I'm glad I looked at this. Kenneth Walker, DJ Dallas, and then the ghost of Darwin Thompson is the current running back from Seattle.
My Fantasy Pros rankings platform still has Igwebuike as a Seahawk. My bad.
Okay, so so this time of year I actually go to spotrack.com for all my roster decisions because they update like instantaneously with all the so that's
today I learned I've been pronouncing that website wrong for 2 years. I call them Spotrack.
I think it's Spotrack. I don't know. I could be wrong also.
we need to tweet them and say like, hey, like how do you pronounce here?
All right, so let's say, for example, Eric Gray, he lands on the Seahawks. He's looking great in camp. He's beating out Darwin Thompson and DJ Dallas. Let's say in week 4, Kenneth Walker goes down with an injury. It's a mild sprain. He'll be out 4 to 6 weeks.
MCL.
Okay. Yeah, whatever. I was just trying to think of something that's not like season ending.
Yeah.
Eric Gray is the waiver wire pickup of the week. Every show is like, hey, blow all your fab on Eric Gray, yada, yada, yada. Can you flip Eric Gray for a 24 first right there?
Especially to a contender?
Maybe. Probably not. But hey, you throw a third as a sweetener on top.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just took
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You took your 23 second, you took your 24 third, and you now have a 24 first. And a Superflex league, let's say that team flames out and it becomes a top 4 pick. Now you're looking at Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson,
And what a lot of Braylon Allen, I love Braylon Allen.
Yeah.
Anyways, but what a lot of people also don't appreciate, I think, too, is that like picks far out, like they're good to have. They're good assets to have a year or 2 out. Like you pay a little bit, quote unquote, for sometimes having to hold them while they're not like, worth as much or turning into a player sometimes or that sort of thing. But they're more fluid as far as a buying power than something else that you would have on your roster. So because right now, if you gave me if you said spin the wheel on a random 24 first or the 111 in 23, give me the random 24 first. Right. That the mystery 24 first that I don't know what it is. Right. So, I think that's important. Let me pick your brain about one more thing, too, because, who knows the next time we're going to have Dan Toomey on my show. Right. You mentioned these cheaper super flex quarterbacks, late second ish, and maybe even less, the problem I'm having looking at them is which one's going to be the guy to have. Sam Howell versus Jacoby Brissett. Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold. Well, I happen to be a Lancer, but there are some people who believe in Purdy. Let's see. Trask versus Baker Mayfield. I just don't know who's going to be the one to have to make my quarterback 3. I'm going to probably have to wait till we get some stronger signals from camp and maybe the price goes up, but worth it? What do you think? Because it's only going to go up to a certain point because it's Baker effing Mayfield.
Yeah. All right, let's get to specifics.
Desmond Ridder or Tyler Heineke. Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's going to be there, so it won't matter. The Falcons aren't out. I'll say that. That's a whole other topic.
Josh, my regular co-host, is a Falcons fan, so I'm sure he's happy to hear that.
Yeah. So I think there are tiers within this tier of quarterbacks that I mentioned. I think you got your locked-in starters that we talked about that can produce high-end quarterback numbers. Your Geno Smith, your Jared Goff. You got guys that are going to start, but nobody really is thinking of getting, like your Derek Carrs. I'm trying to think of another quarterback in that like Derek Carr range.
Daniel Jones, Matthew Stafford, Mac Jones, Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett. I'm just kind of throwing out names that are kind of in my rankings.
Yeah. And then you got your Sam Howell, your Jacoby, your Baker, your Kyle Trask tier. And I think you're just going to have to put a stake in the ground and pick your guy and claim him. In Tampa, Baker is going to beat out Kyle Trask. I know Baker gets a lot of hate, but I think he'll beat out Kyle Trask for sure.
Mhm.
Because we've seen ceiling outcomes with him at least. Um, Kyle Trask wasn't even active on game day rosters last year.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know. There's not much more you got to say about that. I don't think.
Mhm.
Even like week 18, when things were kind of settled already, like Trask wasn't even active as
Mhm.
a player. And then the Washington situation is interesting because apparently we're days away from a new owner. I don't know. I don't know if you've seen any of the news cycles coming out of
I didn't
Washington.
know.
I don't know, like they're ready to sell, they're not ready to sell. Last thing I saw is like Dan Snyder has cleared out his office already. So I mean, I feel like I was talking about the Raiders, like their mess comes from the top down. I feel like the new Washington franchise, like their direction is going to come from the top down. You know, what kind of owners they're going to have in there? Are they going to have an owner who just wants to sell tickets and merchandise and gets fans in the seats? You know, Jacoby's probably the guy. Is it an owner that wants to make the playoffs and compete and like right away make a run? Maybe they make a move for Lamar Jackson. Or is it an
Mm.
owner who's like more sound minded and like has a knowledge of the game? Then maybe he just goes with Sam Howell and see what happens. Um, I think players like that, though, Brissett and Howell, are cheap enough where you can possibly just go get both. You know, just double down on the position and then see what happens. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, because the prices we're talking about are so cheap right now that you could probably even take like a developmental player on your roster that you're not super enthralled with, and use late round picks to get some of these guys.
So my last take is probably my most boring one, and because it's about tight ends. Um, so we often say that, oh, tight end is a wasteland, and if you're not going to get one of the top 3 or 4, then pivot to this or that, and I get that, and I think the 2022 class flashed, I think, much better than folks expected, but there's question marks there. Who's Kate Otten's quarterback? Daniel Bellinger now has Waller in tow. As much as I love Chig, and the team says they plan to use him more, they say they plan to use him. Kyle Phillips is coming back, who's a good slot receiver. Who knows who they draft? Right now, Tannehill and Willis are his foreseeable quarterbacks. There's questions about some of these guys, right? Now what we're hearing about the tight end class of 2023 is, they're a godsend. Daniel Jeremiah is wetting his pants over this tight end class and saying there's this many 10 tight ends could go in like the top 2 rounds and that sort of thing. And it seems to be, and I wrote this take down before the Gesicki signing, but he's not really a tight end anyway. It seems to be affecting the free agent market in tight ends, right? Because the Giants said, well, let's trade for Waller, and that was maybe different, but we have Schultz still out on the market. Moreau visiting with the Saints, which they already have Jawan Johnson. Who knows how much money they're going to give a guy to be in a crowded tight end room. Trying to pull up my my show sheet from earlier this week where I had a list of people who were still left. But the tight end market, other than Gesicki, has been pretty slow, right? And I think it's because of this crowded or deep 2023 class. And as much as they're on the older side, as far as prospects go, Mayer will already be 22 in July, Darnell 22 in August, Dalton Kincaid 24 in October, Musgrave 23 in September, Tucker Kraft 23 in November, Payne Durham 23 in June, Mallory 24 in June, Josh Wiley 24 in September, Kuntz 24 in June, Luke Schoonmaker 25 in September, Braden Willis, if he's going to get drafted, 24 in November. Jaleel, the ghost of Jaleel Billingsley, is 23 in May, and et cetera, et cetera. So as much as they're on the older side, they're also on like the smaller and more athletic side. And they seem to be like the way that the NFL is using tight ends now. All that to say, the same way that the NFL is looking at running backs and saying, we can get somebody in the draft, go away, Devin Singletary. I think they're saying we can get somebody in the draft, go away, insert tight end here, and I think the tight end market is a little slow.
Yeah, so I pulled up a list of tight ends that are still waiting to sign deals. We got Dalton Schultz, Austin Hooper, Foster Moreau, Irv Smith Jr., Robert Tanyan, Mercedes Lewis. So um, outside of Schultz, it's kind of a list of Jags. I'd say just the guy.
Sure, yeah.
Austin Hooper, I feel like a lot of his value was off that one season where he was just force fed targets at a obscene level. I will agree. I think this tight end class is very deep, and I think there's many different body types, depending on what a team needs. Not a lot of people who play fantasy football realize this, but like there are positions within the tight end designation. You have your Darnell Washingtons, who are going to be like a sixth offensive lineman and be asked to block a lot. But he showed at the combine that when he has to catch, he can make great catches. You have your Luke Musgraves and your Dalton Kincaids, who are more of the Mike Gesicki stereotype, where they are just basically big-bodied wide receivers who are going to ask to pass catch a lot. And then you're going to have your Michael Mayer, who's kind of like your TJ Hawkinson and George Kittle, who is a very nice hybrid of both of those players put together. I think this is a really good tight end class, and I think I think you're right. I think it does have some effect on the free agency market.
But your point is good too, because there's not that many free agents that are worth having an effect on anyway. So maybe I should have sort of changed the show sheet after the Gesicki side.
Yeah, like remaining tight ends are trash.
So it's I've been talking with some folks and having some debate about Gesicki. I acknowledge that I'm not saying he's to the moon now, and that there are people there like Hunter Henry and Juju, right? But I just think that he ate in Miami, then a new coach got there, didn't use him. Now he's going somewhere with Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, who's maybe even saying, like, I know this is narrative, but get that guy because we're gonna do this with him, And O'Brien was an OC with the Hernandez Gronk thing, which I'm not comparing these two to, but anyway, all that to say, I'm not saying that Gesicki is to the moon, but his price is so low. I think it's a bigger bump for him in New England than people are saying. Or am I wrong? Because they got Juju and Hunter Henry, and they might even draft JSN or Addison, so don't even bother.
Yeah. So when I'm trying to project how a player is going to be used in an offense that we have no clues on, because it's Bill O'Brien's first year as the offensive coordinator in this go with the Patriots, and I don't know if he's got different ideas. I tend to use the money. I follow the money, and I let the money tell me, is this player someone who is brought in as a priority ad for their offense? And he only signed a 1 year, basically a 1 year, $4 million contract, which is not a lot of money. So I don't really see him having a super large role in this offense, based on both when he was signed and for what he was signed for. He wasn't a priority ad because they didn't add him on day one. He's not a player that they see as having long-term possibilities with the franchise because it's a 1 year deal, and it's also very minimal money. So I think it was a signing of convenience that they will try to find a use for, but I'm not convinced they will find a big use for him, because the other thing is the tight end they lost was Jonnu Smith, who is a great blocking tight end as well. A lot of people don't realize how good Jonas Smith was at blocking because he was so physical and used his body so well. And Gesicki is your, prototypical Jimmy Graham stereotype, like he's not going to really be blocking too much. He's going to be used as a wide receiver more often than not. So I don't think the Patriots have a great vision on how they're going to use him this year. And I don't think, I think it's an upgrade for him, because I know the reason he wasn't used in Miami was because he doesn't block at all.
Yeah.
So it's an upgrade in the fact that he has the possibility of being used in New England, but I just don't know what role they expect him to fill.
I know. Well, Dan, I can't thank you enough. I've taken an hour and a half of your time.
Wow, this
Uh,
is great.
well, I know neither of us are watching college basketball, but you've got Rashee Rice tape to get to,
I do. I do.
right? As we all should. And you can find that at the Dynasty Nerds film room. So why don't you give us all your plugs one more time before we land the plane on this thing?
Yeah. So on Twitter, you can find me at DanT_NFL. Most of my work will be at dynastynerds.com. We've mentioned a couple of times the Nerd Herd membership. We've been using the trade browser tool, which I know is a huge asset you probably take advantage of. I run rookie mock draft shows every Monday, and then I even do roster reviews from time to time on our own private members only Discord. So it's a lot of value add, especially this time of year. You can use my promo code Luna, LUNA, at checkout for 15% off. The last thing I want to drop is I work at a restaurant in New Jersey, and our owner, he has a charitable cause that he does in March. It's called Mustaches for MS. The mustache is not my daily driver. I'm more of a beard guy like yourself, but
Oh, okay.
For the month of March, I help my guy Daryl out. So we want to raise awareness. It's a multiple sclerosis fundraising campaign. If you are interested in learning a little bit more, possibly donating, you could check out his website. It's singleparentswithms.com. They do a lot of great things. They reach out to single parents who are suffering from multiple sclerosis and do what it takes to get them maybe like some handicap access in their house or help with a bill or two here and there, because it's hard being a single parent as much as it is, and then you add a disease like MS on top of that. So Daryl does a lot of great things. So I just really like to mention that on any show that I go on for the month of March. It's a good cause.
Really, I'm really glad you did that. That's awesome, and of course, Jersey Strong,
Jersey Strong.
Fairleigh Dickinson. So, let's see. You can find me at ffjunkie_ on Twitter, goingfor2.com, obviously, having my rankings and some articles. I've been churning out prospect profiles like it's my job. And the next one coming up is, oddly enough, Hendon Hooker. So that's the one that I'm drafting at the moment. Goingfor2.com, Going for 2 Live has a wide variety of content for you. We have a podcast pretty much every night of the week. And sometimes what we're doing in the off season is alternating. So for example, Kyle Senra, who's in the chat now, has a show on Thursdays, Dynasty Gambit. And then like the next Thursday after that, will be Gladys's show in no particular order. And so we've got a wide variety of stuff for you. And of course, goingfor2.com has all the articles and rankings and stuff on Dynasty and Redraft and other DFS. And hell, we even have some XFL stuff, for you DGens out there.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you're listening on the Going for 2 Live podcast feed, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching us here on YouTube, whether it's now live or later, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click the thummy thingy to like the video, maybe even click that bell to get notified. And I guess that's a wrap. Dan, thanks for coming on. And everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Oh, Josh is not here, so I have to say go Irish.